Math 76, lesson 29, multiplying fractions, reducing fractions by dividing common factors. Again, if you're looking for the video on lesson 28, see the video on lesson 23. Use of fraction manipulatives is not too difficult, and I don't think I need to make multiple videos just because the size of the fractions change. So lesson 28, same method as lesson 23. You're just using different size shapes or different pieces of circles. So let's focus on multiplying fractions and then how to reduce them by dividing by common factors, or what I like to call the rule of the number 1. And we'll go more on that when we talk about reducing. And hopefully I've already told you in class. But let's talk about multiplying fractions. Okay? So let's say we have to multiply 3/4 by 2/3. Multiplying fractions is very, very simple. All we have to do is take the top number and multiply it by the top number. And then we take the bottom number and we multiply it by the bottom number. So unlike addition or subtraction and multiplication, the denominators do change. And we do not need the same denominator to multiply as we do with addition and subtraction. So in multiplying fractions, we can take any fraction and multiply it by any other fraction. All we do is numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So 3 times 2 gives me 6, and then 4 times 3 gives me 12. And then we can see that 6 is exactly half of 12, so that fraction is going to reduce to 1/2. Right? Now, let's see here. I'll do one more example before I start talking about reducing. Now let's say we have 2/3 times the number 4. Right? Now, some of you are asking, well, how do I multiply a fraction times a whole number? Technically you can't. But you can. So this might be a little strange. I can't just multiply by a whole number, but I can take this whole number and I can turn it into a fraction. And this is where I get into my number 1 rule. What number can go into 4 4 times? 1. So if I take 4 and I compare that to the fraction 4 over 1, which number is greater? Neither. They're equal. They're actually the same number. So any whole number can be turned into a fraction by simply writing it as a numerator over the denominator of 1. If you remember your 1 times tables or your 1 division tables, any number divided by 1 is equal to itself. So instead of doing 2/3 times 4, I'm going to rewrite this problem as 2/3 times 4 over 1. From there, I just follow my multiplication rules. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. I have 8/3. I'm going to convert that into a mixed number. I can use division as well. Oh, I don't think I mentioned that in a couple lessons ago. We can also use division to convert this into a mixed number. Some of you may immediately see that 3 goes into 8 2 times. So being 6, so we'll have 2, and then we'll have 2 left over for 2/3. If you can't quite see that immediately, you can always use division. 3 will go into 8 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. We subtract, our difference is 2, and then our remainder we'll write as a fraction as 2/3. So division will also get you the same answer. All right, so your final answer here is 2 2/3. Now let's talk about reduction through dividing by common factors. Now let's say we have, we'll start with a small one. Let's say we have the fraction 8 over 12, and they tell you to reduce this fraction. One way to reduce it is by using common factors. So if we look at the numbers 8 and 12, we can list the common factors of 8 and 12, right? So they're both going to have 1, right? Here we'll say factors of 8, factors of 12. They're both going to have 1. Let's see here, 1 times 8, 1 times 12. 2 times 4 would equal 8. 2 times 6 will equal 12. 8 will not have the number 3. 12 will. 3 times 4. 4 is already represented in both of them. 5 isn't going to work. 6 is already represented on 12. 7 doesn't work. 8 doesn't work. And there's no sense in going any higher than 8. So let's go ahead and circle our common factors. Common factors are 1, 2, and 4. So what reduction by common factor says is I can pick any one of these common factors. I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by that common factor to reduce the fraction. So what that looks like is if I take the number 8 and I divide it by 4, and then I take the number 12 and I divide it by 4, that will be the same fraction but smaller. So 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. So 8/12 is equal to 2/3. Now the reason why this works is because it's kind of like dividing by the fraction 4 over 4. 4 over 4 is equal to the number 1. If I take any number and I divide it by 1, I have the same number, something we just talked about. So that's kind of like the division identity rule. Any number divided by 1 is equal to itself. So all we did was, through a little manipulation, we divided 8/12 by 1, written as 4 over 4, and it reduced our fraction for us. Right? Now you won't always have to only do this once. Now notice I picked the greatest common factor for this fraction. What if I'd picked something else like 2? I'm obviously not going to pick 1 because that's not going to reduce anything, but let's say I picked 2. So let's say I had 8 over 12 and I divided each side by 2. Right? 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. Is this fraction completely reduced? No, not yet. I would still have to reduce or divide by another common factor. In this case, the only common factor between 4 and 6 is 2, so I divide by 2 again. Well, 2 and 1, but we're not going to use 1. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2, 6 divided by 2 gives me 3, and then I have the final answer again of 2/3. Let's see, are there any harder ones? You can see here. I think that's pretty much it for this lesson. Yep, that's all there is. So if you guys have any questions, let me know on the school website. If not, I will see you in class.